your mind of all these idols associated with the community's beliefs that haven't been scientifically tested. The den, that's your family. Your family probably believes a whole bunch of stuff that's false. You grow up as a kid in that family and you believe it because the family believes it. But guess what? If you investigate scientifically, you might discover that an awful lot of the things your family believes in are false. So beware the idols of the den. The market is the business world. So if you ever participated in business, and Francis Bacon was a privy councillor and head of the finance for England, I think for James and Elizabeth, whatever. Ended up in jail, of course. Whenever you have so much, all that money, he ended up for a while in the Tower of London for corruption. Although, who knows? It's not like he had a whole bunch of secrets in his garage next to his. What kind of car did Biden have? Oh, never mind. I just thought, heck with the secrets. What's he doing with that kind of a car? It just seemed like Biden. But no, sorry. Back. Okay. So the marketplace. The marketplace has a lot of beliefs, and you can fall into a trap thinking that these beliefs of the marketplace are true. So beware. Don't fall for those. And the theater. It's the theater. Well, this is pretty speculative, but and he's trying to stay out of trouble, right? And one thing you don't want to do is criticize the church or the religious authorities, because you could get in trouble for that, of course. But the theater is also associated with the front steps of the church. If you think, where did the original theaters come from? I don't know if you've had in your English or literature classes, that a lot of the early medieval plays and all were staged on the porch of the church. So that the way our typical theater is arranged is as if it's around the portico of a church. So you have a stage, and the doors of the church could be the exits in and entrances of the stage. And a lot of the plays were performed there, and the natural place for the audience to be was out in front of the church, which was usually a square big enough for an audience to be. So the theater seems very clearly the church. And so the idols of the theater is basically the beliefs of your religion. Haven't been scientifically tested, and so you got to be aware of the idols of the theater. But which way did I go here? Let's get rid of John. We can do that. Get rid of that. And that. And back to Thomas Hobbes. In fact, let's go back to my notes here. Thomas Hobbes is born a twin of fear. He said that himself. And in fact, his basis for it was that the Spanish Armada was attacking England. You remember the scene, Queen Elizabeth on her white horse going back and forth by the cliffs of Dover, single-handedly going to defeat the Armada. Actually, she was helped by Sir Walter Raleigh. Sir Walter Raleigh is famous for smoking, giving us tobacco products. Really? He brought tobacco back. I think the original that shipped tobacco from the Americas back and got everybody smoking. Kind of fun. But he was also the hero of that because he was the one that led 4 fire ships to ram into the Armada, set the Armada on fire, destroyed the Spanish Armada, destroyed the Spanish wealth in one blow, and that kept England from being attacked by the Spanish. And so Queen Elizabeth never had to get into actual fisticuffs with the Spaniards arriving on the shores. It's fun. There's some good movies that have her riding with the white horse and all that stuff. Red hair, of course, right? Cool. But in any case, Thomas Hobbes was born with the Spanish Armada on its way, and he argues that the reason he was born early was because his mother was so freaked out by the prospect of being attacked by the Spanish Armada that there he was. Children are born, push, etc. No. I remember my kids are all adopted, so all my kids were like handed to me, already cleaned up and stuff. So I never actually had that experience. But I remember Bill Cosby explaining it, and so can I refer to Bill Cosby, or is that illegal now? He's out of jail, right? So, okay, born a twin of fear. He studies in a wonderful school that became a garden, and it's still a garden. The only thing is, if you go to visit it, the owners of the garden prefer to garden in the nude. So it's a rather strange website with these two elderly people that are the gardeners who garden in the nude. But the place is open for people to come and visit. In any case, he went on to study at Magdalen College, which is in Cambridge, right? Magdalen. It's also where C.S. Lewis taught. Etc. And this is the era when people are translating things into English. Because English is, you don't go to Thomas Hobbes as the first English, but you think of Shakespeare, contemporary of Thomas Hobbes. You think of somebody help me with the originator of written English, and that was various stories. Help. I can't think of his name.
Shakespeare?
No. The story of the nun, the story of the Tales of Canterbury. Canterbury Tales.
Chaucer.
Chaucer, thank you. So that's, I think, the earliest. And of course, it's very difficult. You can't read it without some sort of a gloss. Try to understand what might this all be. Well, Hobbes is that way too. And so if we go and we look at Hobbes's, I posted them in, where did I post them? Let's just do this. We should go to notice this still continues to be completely free on the internet. Another reason why I don't think it's a good idea to make you buy an $80 textbook that has excerpts from it. I hope you don't mind. But if we look at the way he writes, and I'm sure this has been edited for modern folks, but you still might see different odd writing, odd word spelling, and so on. To my most honored friend, Mr. Francis Godolphin of
You've got to have a preface that explains who's making it possible for you to write this and print this, and they're usually the nobles that have all the money, because you're not just printing this on your own. So you've got to thank all the authorities, your most humble and most obedient servant, etc. But now, if we look at how this book, and this was one of the most astounding books to me. I shouldn't do this. It's all right. I'll show you the very beginning of it. If we can get there. Hello. Maybe I should have just clicked on. All right. The power of a man, to take it universally, is his present means to obtain some future apparent good, and is either original or instrumental. Natural power is the immanence of the faculties of body or mind, as extraordinary strength, form, prudence, arts, eloquence, liberality, nobility. Instrumental are those powers which, acquired by these or by fortune, are means and instruments to acquire more, as riches, reputation, friends, etc. So you can see how he generally writes in English. By the way, this book, Leviathan, was published in Latin as well. The idea of printing it in English was a relatively new adventure, right? And when we look at Leviathan, one of the neat things about it is if you look at the cover, this is the original cover, and I don't know if you can see it. Let's see if we can. No, it's not going to let me zoom in. Why? What's going on? Well, that's probably the best picture. If you look at this close up enough, notice that this is the king, and all of these are people. See, so the state is the Leviathan. Leviathan comes from the Bible. It's the big fish that swallowed. Begins with a J. Jonah. Thank you. Sorry, you shouldn't hit your head, by the way. That doesn't help. But Jonah swallowed. Remember, and then barfed up where he was supposed to go. You don't try to sail away from God's ordained, because the ship gets tossed, Jonah gets thrown overboard. Fish swallows him and takes him to where he was supposed to go. So it just goes to show you, go where God tells you to go. Don't try to do anything else. But so this is that metaphor. The state is the big fish, in a sense. But let me go to some specific parts of this book. This is cool. How does speech get started? The invention of printing, though ingenious compared with the invention of letters, is no great matter. But who was the first that found the use of letters is not known. He that first brought them into Greece, men say, etc. But the use of speech, the general use of speech, is to transfer our mental discourse into verbal, or the train of our thoughts into a train of words, and that for two commodities, etc., etc. He's going to talk about not only speech, but he also talks about sight, for example. How do you see things? You use your eyes, but how do your eyes actually see anything? Hobbes just absolutely startled me, because in this book he argues that particles from the things that you see have to fly away from that object and bounce into your eye.
I'm reading that and I thought, what a bunch of nonsense. And then I realized, wait a minute, photons. That's how we see, right? Photons are like particles that bounce off of the objects, and the way they bounce off of the objects or actually stimulate particles, depends how that actually works. But we get to see light particles, that's what our eyes are receiving, etc. So he's not that far off. Something has to actually enter into our eye, and for him to say there are particles, bits of pieces of the object that's flying into our eye, it sounded really weird. But the more I thought about it, wow, this is the first anyone has tried to figure that out, and he's pretty darn close, actually. And when you're listening to sounds, physical sounds in the air literally go into the ear and bounce around and enter into the brain. And by the way, as far as he's concerned, they keep on moving. They don't stop.